Shalom Abracha, everyone. Agutavach, Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov. We're a little late with the pizza that should be here soon. Just work up an appetite. Where's my dear friend Moshe? Moshe, okay. Shavua Tov. Thank you for coming. Today is a very special night in that, let's make sure that no one is going to bother. Okay. It's a special evening because it's Matzah Shabbos, and it's Matzah Shabbos, Shabbos Mevorchim. We bless the new month, and it has been our custom the last 2 years, and now we're on our third year, to do these very special Malava Malkas, and to honor the Shabbos, and to concentrate on the tzadikim, as we know that the Malava Malka has always been the time to tell a story of tzadikim. Particularly the tzadikim that are the students, the Baal Shem Tov and his students. These are the tzadikim that Hashem has blessed the Jewish people to help us transition into the time period of Mashiach. And these were these great, powerful souls, extraordinary souls, that were far beyond the level of souls that the Jewish people have seen for hundreds of years. These super powerful neshamas. And these are the souls of the great tzadikim. And maybe the connection to Malava Malka, I haven't seen this, is because Malava Malka is the meal of King David. Malava Malka is the meal of David HaMelech. We call David Malka Mashiach. Let me get the... hold on just one second. Chavra, we need you over there.
You ready?
Yeah. So Malava Malka is the meal of King David, of David HaMelech, and the Baal Shem Tov's light is the beginning of the light of Mashiach. And therefore, we tell stories of the holy Baal Shem Tov together with David HaMelech. This is the most appropriate thing to do during such a high time of Malava Malka, when we connect to the future light of Mashiach. So sit down, enjoy tonight's tzaddik that we're inviting here tonight. Especially is a tzaddik whose yortzeit was just 2 weeks ago. Less than 2 weeks ago. About 2 weeks ago. On the 12th of Cheshvan was the yortzeit of the great and saintly student of the holy Baal Shem Tov, Reb Zev, or as he's more commonly known, Reb Wolf. Zev is a wolf. And because Zev is a wolf. And so in Yiddish, the people who had Yiddish names, he was known as Reb Wolf Kitzes. And he was a student, and he was one of the highest and greatest students of the Baal Shem Tov, very, very close. And this can be seen from the fact that he is buried right next to the Baal Shem Tov. In the Baal Shem Tov's Ohel, there are a few tzadikim buried along with the Baal Shem Tov. There are his two grandchildren, Rabbi Ephraim of Slabodkea and Rabbi Reuven of Mezhebush. These were the two grandchildren, two brothers. They're buried, obviously, with their grandfather. The Ohev Yisroel, the great Apterov, who was a tzaddik, a great Chassidic master, and lived in the city of Mezhebush. This is 2 generations after the Baal Shem Tov. He's also buried there. And besides that, it's Reb Wolf Kitzes. And the Baal Shem Tov had 60 of the greatest giants as students. No one merited to be buried right next to the Baal Shem Tov, only Reb Wolf. So we can imagine that this was no ordinary fellow, the holy and saintly Reb Wolf Kitzes. So we invite his powerful neshama to join us here tonight. And we will tell stories and connect to his great power and light of this great tzaddik. So we're going to ask Moshe to warm our hearts a little bit, to open up here. So we just mentioned Yehi Shalom B'Chelech. Let there be peace in your city, Shalva, tranquility, Ba'armenoisoyech, in your palace, referring to the holy land of Eretz Yisroel. So we know that for all of history, Jews so deeply were yearning and longing to go to Eretz Yisroel. The Baal Shem Tov himself had this powerful desire and want to go to Eretz Yisroel. And we can imagine, as mentioned earlier, once the Baal Shem Tov was revealed, and this great tzaddik that is here to pave the way for the Geula, for the redemption, we begin to sense Eretz Yisroel in our souls to a much greater degree. So we find that from the Baal Shem Tov and onward, Jews started making much more aliyah. The aliyah started increasing. And it was also because things became more possible, accessible. But even deeper than that, people wanted it more. Because the Baal Shem Tov turned on the souls of the Jewish people. And once you feel your soul, you're attracted to Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Wolf, the great student of the Baal Shem Tov, desired very much to go to Eretz Yisrael like his master. And like his holy master, the great Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov didn't make it to Eretz Yisrael. He turned back. And the same was also the student Rabbi Wolf. And this is an amazing story related to how Rabbi Wolf and why he turned back when he was going to Eretz Yisrael. He came to his holy master to take leave. The Baal Shem Tov should give him a blessing, that he should merit, that Eretz Yisrael should let him in. He should be able to come into the Holy Land. And the Baal Shem Tov said to him as follows, Wolf, he said, be very, very careful. Very careful. Think before you talk. Think well before you talk. Tracht gut. Be careful with your words. That was the instructions. No, Rabbi Wolf was already accustomed, not always understanding what his rebbe, but he knew that when his rebbe gave instructions, you had to listen to it to the T. Anyways, Rabbi Wolf leaves to Eretz Yisrael, set sail. I guess they used to go from Ukraine. He would somehow cross over to Turkey, and then from Istanbul, Constantinople, whatever, they would take a boat, ships, to cross on over. Anyways, he makes it onto the ship, and they set sail, and the ship makes a standard landing or a stop in an island. This was an island that the ships would stop to replenish. They had various different, the sailors had certain things that they needed. It was a long voyage. So they would stop and replenish for various different things that they needed. Food, other things that were needed for the ship. And this was like a regular stop. As the ship docked at this place, the great Rabbi Wolf also went off. And it was like a break for a couple of hours as they were doing. And then let's say they announced, they said, by 4 o'clock, everybody must be back on the boat. He went off onto this island. It could have been a very pretty island, a nice place. So what does a student of the Baal Shem Tov, when he sees surrounded by such magnificent nature, he goes into a meditation. He's sitting under a tree, looking out, and suddenly his heart swells with love of Hashem and with awe of God. And he's just getting pulled in deeper and deeper and deeper into this meditation, and he loses all track of time. And the boat makes its sound, its horn. It sounds its horn a few times, last warning, and the boat sets sail. About a half an hour later, he wakes up from his trance, and he just gets all scared, goes running down to the port. The ship isn't there. He's very, very disturbed, doesn't know what to do. For a moment, he almost panics, but he's a student of the Baal Shem Tov, and he knows everything Hashem does is for the good, so he's going to make the best of the situation. Turns around, the Jew alone on this island. How is he going to get back? How is he going to go to Eretz Yisrael? How is he going to get back to this? But he doesn't know what to do. So he starts walking around in this place, looking, where he sees this house, and so he walks towards the house. It was like in the forest. The island had like a forest. So he moves into the woodsy area, and the door opens up, and out of all people, there's an old Jew there. And he says to him, Rabbi Wolf, he says. That's what he says to him. Rabbi Wolf, he says, welcome. Stay by us for Shabbos. This was on a Thursday. So the whole thing is like, it's so strange. It was all like surreal. So, okay, stay for Shabbos. There's never a better choice, of course. He's so happy to see a Jew. He's going to stay as a place to be for Shabbos. He says, we have a minion here. Okay, fine. But then he says, but you know what? I can't stay on this island. I have to get back. He says, don't worry. You think this is not the only ship that stops here. The ships always stop. So the next, after Shabbos, Sunday, we'll go down to the port. We'll get you onto one of the boats that are going. Okay. He stays and he has this beautiful Shabbos here with this Yid. Very pleasant with other Jews that were there. And then Motzei Shabbos, or Sunday, takes leave. And this Yid accompanies him. And he makes the arrangements for him. And he's about to get on to this next ship that's ready to leave. And at the last moment, this Jew turns to him. this Yid with the long white beard, and he says to him, tell me, you're from Poland. He says, you're from Ukraine, from Poland? How are the Jews making out in these places? How are they doing the Yidden? And Rabbi Wolf says, well, despite the golus and the hardships, God takes care of his people. And Baruch Hashem, they're doing, Baruch Hashem, pretty well. And he gets onto the boat. The Yid looks at him. They say goodbye. He gets onto the ship, and he's off sailing to Eretz Yisrael. It doesn't take 15 minutes when suddenly he remembers the words that the Baal Shem Tov, his master, said to him. Think before you talk. Don't talk just like this. Think, be careful when you say something. And suddenly it hits him like a ton of bricks. And he's thinking and thinking, did I say the right thing? Did I say? Aren't the Jews suffering poverty, persecution, suffering? Why did I say everything is good? And the Baal Shem Tov said I should think before I talk. And I just said everything is good. No, it's not good. It's not good. And he was so bothered. And as the ship is going farther and farther, he cannot make peace with himself that he messed up bad. He got this gut feeling that he did something really wrong and he didn't know what to do. So I guess this wasn't the only island that they stopped. Somewhere else the boat took a stop and he got off the boat, somehow made about a face and went back because he was not going to continue until he talks to his master, the Baal Shem Tov. He went back to the Ukraine, came back to the Baal Shem Tov. And as soon as he walks into the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov says to him, no, Volf, Volf, he says, Wolf, Wolf. If Avram Avinu asks you how his children are doing in exile, and you had an opportunity to give him the answer, he says, every day the Baal Shem Tov says, Avram stands in front of God pleading for his children's suffering. And Hashem says, don't worry, Avram, my dear, I take care of them. I take care of them. And one of these days, as Avram was pleading in front of Hashem, and then Hashem says, don't worry, I'm telling you, I take good care of him. Hashem said to Avram, you can even ask a fine Jew, Volf. Ask Reb Wolf. So he asked him on the island. And that was the end of that journey. It's not just enough to wait for Mashiach, to hope for Mashiach. It has to be so much on top of our mind that the first thing that comes out of our tongue is we want Mashiach now. Moshe. Anigin Moshe.
I want to say something about Avram. Very, very simple niggin. The words are Ki anachnu bnei Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yakov. That's pretty much it. Ki anachnu bnei Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yakov. Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yakov. Ki anachnu bnei Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yakov. Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yakov, say with me. Ki anachnu bnei Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yakov. Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yakov. Ki anachnu bnei Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yakov. Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yakov. אנחנו שרים אליך מתפללים שתביא כבר גאולה שלמה. אנחנו שרים אליך מתפללים שתביא כבר גאולה שלמה. כי אנחנו בני אברהם, יצחק ויעקב. Avraham, Yitzchak veYaakov, Avraham, Yitzchak veYaakov. Avraham, Yitzchak veYaakov, Avraham, Yitzchak. Orachim aratz
Abraham, Yitzchak veYaakov, Abraham, Yitzchak veYaakov. Abraham, Yitzchak veYaakov, Abraham, Yitzchak veYaakov.
Kol haneshama de'aleka, lezuka, lezuka. Kol haneshama de'aleka, haleluya, haleluya. Ki anachnu bnei Avraham,
Yitzchak veYaakov, Abraham, Yitzchak veYaakov.
Yourself and on your children, oh Hashem, bring Mashiach now. Oh, Rachim alav smicha al yiladecha, shlach lanu kvar et Mashiach tzidkecha, ki anachnu bnei Avraham, Yitzchak veYaakov, Avraham, Yitzchak veYaakov.
Yitzchak veYaakov, Avraham,
Yitzchak veYaakov. Say
The pizza is going to be so much better once we get it, the longer we wait. Let's try to wait for Mashiach as strong as we're waiting for pizza. Yisha Yisma Meya Im Koveh Yachake Lovo V'Yafal Pi Yachake Lo Tidai Thank you. Im Koveh Yachake Lo Al Pi Sheyisma Meya Im Koveh Yachake Lo Yidai 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 Oh Yidai 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 So today in the Parsha we read about the amazing coming together of Yitzchak and Rivka and the Shidduch. This is the week of Shidduchim. This is the week of marriage. The first Jewish marriage, the first couple. Avram and Sarah got married before they were Jewish. And the real Jewish marriage is Yitzchak and Rivka. Rabbi Wolf he was mostly a pretty poor man. I don't think there were too many rich people living in Mezhebush in those days. And this Rabbi Wolf had a daughter of marriageable age, and he didn't seem like much was happening in the shidduch arena. And weeks and months and years passed, and this girl wasn't getting younger, and it didn't seem like sitting around. So the Baal Shem Tov inquired from Rabbi Wolf. He said, Wolf, what's going on? You have a daughter to marry. I don't see you working on it. Well, he said, well, how in the world am I going to marry off a daughter? I don't have a penny to my name. So the Baal Shem Tov said, let's first get her engaged. He said, send a shliach, send a messenger to go to this and this place. I forgot the name of where it was. A big a place with a big Jewish population, a pretty nice sized city. and have this, and it'll be on my expense, the Baal Shem Tov said. Pay this person on my expense. Go over there and tell them to say that there is a very reputable person, one of the great, a very special man. His name is Rabbi Wolf of Kitzes. Very, very great man. Rabbi Wolf was actually a Rav in the city of Tulchin before he moved to Mezhebush. So he was a great Talmud Chacham, great scholar. And he said, tell him to tell the people that you're looking for, and you have an exceptional, special, good daughter, and you're looking for a really, really special chassan, and that you are promising 3,000 ruble as dowry for the chassan. Now, 3,000 ruble was a fortune. Okay. The Baal Shem Tov says he was no stranger to the Baal Shem Tov's ways. So he does as he's told, and he sends someone to that town to go make the offer. This fellow comes, and he's meeting various different prospects. And it wasn't impressing him. Great scholars, Bochrim, special people, but it wasn't like exceptional. Then there was one special boy that he set his eye on. He said, this boy is really, really exceptional. Boy came from a really, really special family. And he himself was a very refined boy and big Talmud Chacham, very pious. And he felt this would be the right match. So he speaks to the family and he tells them about Reb Zev, what kind of person he is, what kind of tzaddik he is, what a great man he is, and what a special daughter he has. And to top it off, he's promising a dowry of 3,000 ruble. That was a hefty sum of money. So this was also a rich family. You know, usually the money gravitates to money. So he liked the idea. He said gesund. And that way it worked those days. He didn't even have a photograph. They sat down, they wrote the Tanayim, everything is probably good. And Zeh. And they wrote the marriage contract, and they set the time for the wedding, that it would be like in 3 months. In any case, he comes back and he tells Reb Zev and the girl that they have a chassan for her. Unbelievable. Now Reb Zev is in deep trouble. He doesn't know what to do. How in the world is he going to make a wedding? What is he going to do? He comes running to the Baal Shem Tov and he says, Rebbe, what do I do now? And the Baal Shem Tov says, don't worry. Don't worry. Okay. It was a custom, still the custom. The Kala sends the chassan gifts. The gifts, the chassan sends to the Kala, but the Kala sends to the chassan also gifts. Whether they buy a chassan shas, a watch, I don't know, things that you give to a chassan. And meanwhile, a month passed, 6 weeks, nothing is coming from the chassan. And this guy was kind of used to, the way the custom is. So he's getting a little, the father of the groom, he's wondering what's going on. So he sends a letter to Reb Zev, and he says, I'm pretty surprised that I don't hear anything, and no gifts came for the groom. This is something strange. He receives the letter, now his heart is pounding. He goes back to the holy Baal Shem Tov, and he says, Rebbe, and he shows the Baal Shem Tov the letter. The Baal Shem Tov reads the letter. He says, don't worry. So he ignores the letter and he doesn't answer. You know how it is in WhatsApp. You can see if you clicked and you read the WhatsApp, you get the 2 blue checks. Well, he didn't know exactly. The guy wasn't sure if Reb Zev Wolf received the letter. He's ignoring him. He's mechutin. He's ignoring him. So he sends him a second letter. The second letter, thank you. He sends him a second letter. And the second letter was a little bit harsher than the first letter. And he says, I don't understand. Nothing's happening. And what's going to be with the wedding? And I don't have any, what's going on with you? And he says, if you ignore this letter as well, I can call the whole thing off. That's what he writes. I want to call the whole thing off. So Rabbi Wolf comes again with the second letter to his rebbe and teacher, the holy Baal Shem Tov, and he says, Rebbe, what do I do? The Baal Shem Tov reads the letter, and he says, don't worry. Send him a letter and tell him that all the gifts and everything is going to be provided by the wedding. Since it's kind of short, it's all going to be provided by the wedding. Tell him you're making the wedding here in Mezhebush, where the Kala is, and invite him to come to the wedding, which is going to be so-and-so at this time. Tell him to come with his family. But tell him to come a week earlier, because you want to host him for a week and take care of him. All right. So he sends this letter, and lo and behold, this person had heard from other people that this Reb Zev is a special man. Volf is a tzaddik. He's a great man. So he trusted him, believed him. He got ready with his entire mishpacha and cousins and uncles. Everybody's coming. And they have this big entourage. They're all making their way. They're coming to the wedding. And Reb Wolf doesn't have a penny to his name to make this wedding. All right. As he gets notice that they're going to be here in a day. Someone came ahead, say that they saw him on the way. They're already coming. They're going a little slower because it's a whole bunch of people, but they're going to be here soon. Doesn't know what to do. So he's already getting into a little panic mode. So he leaves and he wants to go to the Baal Shem Tov. He said, Rebbe, save me. On the way walking to the Baal Shem Tov, he meets a Jew. Looked like a affluent Jew. And this Jew says to him, do you, by the way, know where the Baal Shem Tov lives? So he says, yeah, I happen to be going there now. I'll take you. So this Jew comes together with Reb Wolf to the Baal Shem Tov. As soon as this Jew as soon as they open up the door to Baal Shem Tov's private room to come into him, standing there with Reb Wolf, the Baal Shem Tov looks at this Jew and he says to him, I want to tell you a story. And the Baal Shem Tov says to this Yid as follows. You should know that there was a Jew who was a big merchant. He would deal with lumber. And he would sell lumber to Prussia. Right? That's what it's called. And that was his business. And one time after and he would have to travel to to the dealings. And one time after a particularly big sale, and he was coming back with a big wad of cash. And he was on the way back home. And he's on his way back home. They were passing through a thick forest. And he was tired. And he fell asleep. He had a non-Jewish coachman, a Gentile coachman that was riding. He saw him sleeping and snoring in the back. He figured this is an opportunity. He pulled the wagon off the main road that was going through the forest, went up some kind of a side dirt roads out somewhere, deep in the middle of the thickets, and pulled in like where no one can see, hidden by the brush and the things. He grabs an axe, and he's sleeping. The other fellow, the Jew, is sleeping. He taps him on the shoulder. He opens his eyes, and he's standing over him with an axe. And he says, hey, brother, where's the cash? And he's like, oh, no, please, you can't do this to me. He's a Jew. He right away starts bargaining on the money. Maybe you can just take 50%. We'll go 50-50, this and that. The guy says, give me everything. Everything. Okay, he has no choice. So he hands him the whole stack of money, and fine. So now the guy says, okay, get ready, because I'm going to chop your head open. So he looks at him, and he says, come on, I gave you the money. Now you let me go. He says, what do you think, I'm stupid? He says, what are you going to do? I'm going to let you out. You're going to go to the authorities, go to the police, tell them. They're going to come arrest me, and I'm going to be, because I have no choice. I have to kill you. Oh, so now he's begging, he's pleading, please spare my life. I gave you the money already. I'm not going to tell anybody. I promise you. I swear. He's get nothing. The guy doesn't trust him. So he sees he's not going to get out of it. So he tells him, please, at least give me a couple of minutes. I'll say my last prayers. So much the guy, I had a little mercy on him. He let him say his last prayers. So he was scared. He said, I'll give you 20 minutes. And he took him and he tied him to a tree. Tied him well. And he said, and he went off a little bit. He went off. And he went to smoke a cigarette or something. And meanwhile, he's there. And he's, guy's last 20 minutes left to live. He's praying. He's praying for the depth of the heart. And he's begging God. And he starts crying. And then he says to Hashem, Hashem, if you save me now. I like this Jew's thinking. He says, if you save me now, Abel's there. I'll give you 10%. I'm giving you 4,000 rubles. 40,000 rubles he just handed to the guy. 4,000 rubles I'll give you. And And it was exactly at that instant. And he was, he was davening a little loud. And when he said this, exactly at that moment, the watchman in the forest, not far, the guy was there, hears someone crying, he hears a noise. He starts following the sound. And then he sees this guy, hears noise again, he gets closer and closer, he comes running, and he sees this guy tied up. He unties him. And he said, what happened? He tells him that the coach is just here around, he's going to come back with the axe. So this guy takes out his revolver, he has there, and he gets the guy by surprise, grabs him, ties him up, takes him to the police, comes with him. The guy has to give back the money. Fine. He can't believe the miracle, his good fortune, the miracle that happened. He's so thankful. He feels, Hashem, I can't believe you saved me. Mom, you saved my life. And he makes his way back home. And he's telling everybody the miracle that happened to him. Hashem, Mom saved him. But he totally forgot the promise that he made. That he said he's going to give the 4,000 ruble. Slipped his mind. And a week, and a month, and a half, 6 months went by, nothing. And a year. Meanwhile, upstairs, they were getting a little impatient with this guy. This guy got a miracle and he didn't pay it, right? He made a promise. Made a nether, didn't promise. This person had 2 children. He had a girl and a boy. His daughter became ill. His little girl became sick. And he wasn't putting the two together. Got sick and sick and sick, and this little girl died. Tragedy, terrible tragedy. And again, it didn't occur to him that there was something. A little while later, his son also fell ill. Now that his son is sick, he's going and he's bringing him, calling in every doctor. He's a wealthy man, trying whatever he can. Saves one and only left. This child is the only one left now after his daughter passed away. He's his son. He loves him with all his heart and all his soul. Trying to do to save his son. Nothing. As his son is deteriorating from day to day, he's definitely ill. He hears about the Baal Shem Tov. This merchant hears about the Baal Shem Tov, and he wakes his way to Mezhebush. And here's where the Baal Shem Tov stops. It's this merchant that's standing there with Rabbi Wolf Kitzes right in the room. And this Yid says, Gewalt, Rebbe, that's me. How'd you know? I can't believe it. How did I forget? You're right. I made a promise. He says, Rebbe, please, I'll do it right now. Right now, I'll pay. Please save my... The Baal Shem Tov says, here, right now, give me 4,000 ruble, and hand it to this Yid, Volf, over here, who needs it for his daughter's wedding, for the chasana. He hands him the 4,000 ruble to Reb Volf, right then and there. He had 3,000 for the dowry. He had another 1,000 for gifts and whatever else for the wedding that he had to make. On the weddings, there was only 1,000 ruble. It wasn't like today. In any case, he was able to make a generally nice chasana. And of course, the merchant stayed for the wedding, and he was so happy. And he received a notice from his family that his son suddenly took a turn and is getting better and better and better, and he's all good. This is the story of the Baal Shem Tov with his student Rabbi Wolf Kitsis. There's some salads, chavre, before the pizza's going to be soon, but the salads are here. Have yourself some. Daniel, a gute Woche.
You gotta bring it closer. You gotta come close. Da, 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 da.
We have with us a good Yid. His name is Simcha, and wherever he goes, he brings a lot of Simcha. And he dedicated a song for tonight, so he gets to choose. And I know you told me you have one song that's your favorite Freilich song. Happy for that, or you can pick any.
Out of the four of us, one of us will know it.
You told me once at a wedding. You told me what's your best digging. You asked me. Oh, it was a happy tune. Kiva Moed. There we go.
Everybody feel free to clap along.
Shmuel, come a little closer, Shmuel. We need to hear your voice. Kiva Moed, Kiva Moed, Kiva Moed, Kiva Yishaleshu kulam kedusha lecha Yishaleshu akta Yachad 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 Ay 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 nine nine nine. Pizza's here, guys. Oh, ho! Everybody go wash. L'chaim l'bracha, everyone. L'chaim l'chaim. I want to give a special bracha to those special people who sponsored tonight's event. I'd like to thank Yaakov and Bela Greenbaum, the Eibusha should bench them with whatever they need and whatever they want. Refuah Shalema, and only good things. And Bracha, Nachas from the children, Nachas from the grandchildren, only great things. Shimon and Shendel Liance, the Eibusha should bench them. Mazel Tov on their daughter's wedding, and the Eibusha should only increase more and more and more, and endless simchas by them for all their children and grandchildren. Big Yashikoyach and shout out to Ben Fogel for his sponsorship, co-sponsorship of tonight. Yashikoyach to you. Thank you so much. He's bringing all these beautiful children here to light up. Look at that. L'chaim. Only nachas by you and your family, only good. Mordechai and Rivka Katz, the Eibusha should bench them with all that they need. Nachas from the family and only great things. Who else? There's another good yid. What was his? That's his name. We'll get them. Yeah, the night is still young. Yeah, we're gonna get them to sing. Hold on, I need it.
Singing, we need to hear them.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second here. Yeah. Another big yashikoyach to David Morris for his dedication for tonight. Yashikoyach, may the schus of the Holy Reb Zev, Reb Wolf, stands for you and all that you need and all that you want. No. Yashikoyach. I dafke. It's the only way. Bunya Newman, Yashikoyach, and a special anonymous, the Eibusha should bench you for all you need and all you want with much bracha, mazel, and only good. Thank you. If I forgot anybody, simcha, Yashikoyach to you. Hashem bless everyone with all that they need and all that they want. Yashikoyach. So while you're taking your pizza, I'd like to share with you one of my favorite stories of the great tzaddik Rabbi Wolf of Kitzes. Rabbi Wolf used to go around and try to raise some money for the poor Jews he was one of the people that were the originators of the Aleph Institute. Everybody knows about the Aleph Institute that helps the Jews that are in jail and prison. Amazing organization that reaches out for all these, what we might look at as forgotten Jews, and they reach out and help them. Anyways, Rabbi Wolf used to raise money for Pidyon Shvuyim, and in that he would have to travel from place to place. Those were the days, can you imagine? This is before Uber. So because it was before Uber, the only way to really get around was either with a horse and buggy, or you had to walk. Anyways, he would walk. He didn't really have much other ways of transportation. He would make a way, schlep his way from shtetl to shtetl and raising some money for these Yidden. So one time, he's in the middle of his walk, and it was particularly a hot day, And he was getting very annoyed. You know, it's one of these days that you're annoyed. He was annoyed. And he was getting very frustrated, and he's thinking to himself, you know, Rabbi Wolf was a tzaddik. He loved davening. He loved learning. He loved helping Jews. That too. But lately he was getting so much into the helping of these Jews that he had to cut down on his davening and on his learning. And many times he didn't find the mikveh. He would love to go to the mikveh, and he would have to, so now he would have to daven without a mikveh, you know, and he would daven very late. And he's thinking, for who? For who? He's helping Jews. But then he's thinking to himself, who are these Jews that he's helping? Most of these Jews, some of them are unfortunate. They ended up in jail because they couldn't pay the rent to the pirates. Okay. But some of them are petty criminals. These are pickpocketers. These are thieves. These are ganovim. And it's for these Jews that I'm not davening. It's for these Jews that I'm not learning. It bothered him. He felt maybe they don't deserve him. They don't deserve it. So then a thought occurred to him. And it said to him, Volf. He's talking to himself. And he says, ganovim, thieves, ganovim, big criminals. They're stealing. And you don't steal. You also steal. You're also a ganav. Ganav? When do I steal, he says. You also steal. You steal from your wife's challah that she makes, and you give to the poor. Now she's making challahs on Thursday, you steal a couple of rolls behind her back. She's making for Shabbos, and you give it to the poor. So you're also a ganav. So what makes you better than them? But then he's thinking, come on. That's not a ganav. These guys are stealing for themselves. I'm stealing for the poor. So you can't compare. You can't compare. That's what he's thinking. You can't compare. I am not a ganav like them. But then he says to himself, no. He says, and what are they? Evil thieves? These are also stealing for others. They're poor Jews who tried to make an honest living. It's not working out with all the restrictions, with all the regulations. That was before Trump took away all the regulations. With all the regulations and all the things, it was so hard to make a living. So they too are trying to feed their poor Jewish families. So they're also doing stealing for others, not for themselves. So therefore, don't think you're any better than them. Suddenly, there is a flash of lightning and a boom and a massive thunderstorm. And it's raining cats and dogs, and he gets drenched to the bones. So till now, for the first moment, it was pretty good because he was very hot. Now it's refreshing. He's wet, but it was a downpour. By the time he gets to the first inn and he get himself a little shelter and he's sitting there, he's soaked, and he had his little suitcase where he took his stuff with him, with his tefillin. So he takes his tefillin out, and he sees the tefillin are drenched. It was so wet, it was so much water that his tefillin got soaked. And in his tefillin that got soaked, he got worried that maybe the water, the tefillin, his tefillin that he wears, maybe they weren't such waterproof. And maybe some of that water got into the tefillin, and it passled, and it made the tefillin puzzle. So he opened up the tefillin, and lo and behold, it was wet inside. And when he looks in the parashas, he sees that his tefillin became puzzle, and now he's really angry. It's one thing, the discomfort. Now he doesn't even have tefillin. For who? For those thieves. And he's ready to say, enough is enough. He's never going to do this again. But at that moment, he thinks to himself, we put on tefillin, and God puts on tefillin. Hashem puts on tefillin. Our tefillin, it says, how great are you, Hashem? Our tefillin says, Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And what does it say? Tefillin de Marei Alma, the tefillin of the master of the world, Ma Ksivbei. What does it say in the Eibishter's tefillin? Mi Ka'amcha Yisroel. Who is like the Jewish people? If that's the case, Reb Zev says, these wretched Jews that are languishing in prisons, they are the letters of Hashem's tefillin. And when they're in jail and they're suffering, that means that these letters are ruined because these are Jews that are ruined. Their lives are ruined. So that means the letters in God's tefillin are ruined. So what's better, he's thinking, or what's worse? My tefillin should be puzzled, or the Eibishter's tefillin should be puzzled. He says, let it be thousands of my tefillin should be ruined, then God's tefillin should be ruined. And that moment he decided that he will always care, even for the Jews, that others will point their finger and say, these are the bad Jews. He chas v'sholom didn't want Hashem's tefillin should be puzzled. This is the story. This story has an interesting modern day conclusion. This story I read when I was in the Ukraine with the special Sefer Torah we were taking from and going around to all the great tzadikim with the Baal Shem Tov Sefer Torah. And on the way to Mezhebush, I related that I read this story and I told the story on the bus to all the Jews that were there with us. And I was very moved by this story. And I told the story, very special story. Then I came back to Los Angeles and we were preparing for the grand Achnasa Sefer Torah that took place. Whoever was there knows that was a special night over here in Los Angeles when the entire Los Angeles became the little shtetl of Mezhebush for just a few. It was a magical moment. Lag Bomer, yeah. And as the big white horses were bringing all the children in the wagon, on the Baal Shem Tov's wagon, it was extraordinary. So 2-3 days before that, I flew into New York to get the Sefer Torah that I left in New York, because I wanted to take that Sefer Torah into the Lubavitcher Rebbe's private room and write a letter in the Rebbe's room, because I took it to the tzadikim and wrote letters and all by many tzadikim. So I wanted to write in the Rebbe's room. So I flew to New York. I couldn't manage it on the way back, whatever. So I took a special trip the week of Lag Bomer, went to New York, and we wrote a letter in the Rebbe's room. And then I was coming back, and I was super, super exhausted. And I think it was a Monday night. I was returning on the flight, or before that, I had to return, and I knew I'm going to be landing at around 6 o'clock in the afternoon in LAX. Monday nights is when I usually give my class, the parsha in my life. And I knew that I'm so exhausted, and we're having this massive event. I think the event was on Wednesday night, was the Achnasa Sefer Torah, and I didn't feel prepared, and everything was just still a big mess. So I was worried, and I was thinking that, maybe, I was talking to my wife on the phone, thinking maybe we should cancel the shir this week for Monday night, because I don't have time to prepare, I'm not ready, and I'm flying that day, I'm just going to be landing here, I'm not going to be, so maybe we should send out an email that the class is canceled. And I'm thinking to myself, cancel a class of Chassidus? Why? In honor of the Baal Shem Tov Sefer Torah, which the Baal Shem Tov is the originator of Chassidus? I can't do that. So in the last moment I said, no, we're going ahead with the class. What am I going to say? How, what, where, and when? I'll leave it up to Hashem, but I'm giving the class. So I came literally straight from the airport. I remember I ran to my house, I grabbed a bite, and came running right over here to give the class. As I'm giving the class, I said, what am I going to teach? Not something on the parsha. I said, you know what? On the bus, when we were traveling, I taught a discourse about a Sefer Torah. A mimer discourse from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Sefer Torah, which the Lubavitcher Rebbe said when he wrote the special Sefer Torah to greet Mashiach. That's special. So I was teaching that mimer. I said, you know what? I'll do a synopsis of that mimer. I know it, so I'll do it. So I'm standing over there, and this was a class, and I remember that night, only women showed up, and no men, and like happens quite so often. And I'm teaching the women all about, and at a certain point, I got so into it, I closed my eyes, and I was just going. I was just rolling with the mimer. And and again, it wasn't a prepared shir. And suddenly, out of nowhere, in order to explain something about the quality of Jewish souls, I remembered the story of Volf Kitzes with the Sefer Torah, with the letters. And out of nowhere, I told the story. Okay. 2 days later, then I produced the CD. 2 days later, the Achnasa Sefer Torah. I'm standing outside in front of my house, right before the procession is going to start, and a wonderful Jew in this community comes over to me. And he says, talking about Rabbi Wolf, he says to me, Rabbi Wolf, maybe that's why I like Rabbi Wolf so much. He says to me, Rabbi Wolf, what's with you? You're doing miracles already these days. I said, miracles? What? He says, you're already making Rebbe's shtick. You're doing Rebbe's things. You're doing like, I said, what do you want? He says, your CD. I said, okay, what's with the CD? He said, the story you told on the CD. I said, so what? He said, wait, I didn't even remember. I said, yeah, the story. I said, what? He says, you don't know, I'll tell you the story. I visit prisons, and I've been doing it for the last 10 years. I go every week to visit, a week or so, I go to the LA prisons, to the Jews that are there. In the last few weeks, I'm having a lot of turmoil inside of me, because it's every time, the prison is a very dark place. And I realize when I go there, I might cheer up the Jews over there, but I come out feeling very depressed and very down. And it's taking a toll on me. And I was thinking that I'm not going to do it anymore. I don't want to go visit the prison. I even went to speak to my mashpia, he said, and I'm not going to tell you what he answered me. This, that, he says. 2 days ago, literally was a day before I'm supposed to go, and I'm in the car, and I'm having these thoughts about prison that I don't want to do it anymore. And I took your CD in the morning, and I popped it in the car, and I wasn't even listening to what you're talking about. I wasn't listening. I wasn't paying attention. But you usually don't tell too many stories. I don't. I usually speak more concepts. I don't tell so much stories. But here you told the story, so it popped up. I'm starting listening to the story, and I hear the story of Volf Kitzes deciding that he's going to go. And then at that moment, I made up my mind that I'm not going to drop the prisons, and I'm going to continue going to visit Yidden in jail. And this just happened 3 years ago with the Sefer Torah. Story with the tefillin.
Guys, a little Daniel, bring your chair closer. Watch. Hey, Shmuel.
We're talking about tefillin. Here's an incredible story. Reb Tzvi was the Sofer, the great scribe, the great scribe of the holy Baal Shem Tov. His name was Reb Tzvi. The holy Reb Nachum of Chernobyl said about Reb Tzvi Sofer that when he is writing the Parshias of the tefillin, he can see from one end of the world to the other end of the world. The Baal Shem Tov taught this Reb Tzvi the meditations and the kavanas in writing of tefillin. The Baal Shem Tov once said to this holy Reb Tzvi, come out with me out into the field, out into the forest, and I will show you the tefillin of the master of the world. I will show you the tefillin, the Morei Alma. And Reb Tzvi and the Baal Shem Tov went out and they left. Reb Wolf had overheard that statement, and he decided to follow quietly behind these two because he wasn't going to miss a chance to see Hashem's tefillin. The Baal Shem Tov came to a clearing in the forest, and he's standing there with Reb Tzvi. And Reb Tzvi is looking around before something like this. He wants to tovel in a mikveh, he wants to dip in a water, and there's no water around there. Suddenly the Baal Shem Tov calls out, Mikveh Yisroel Hashem. The mikveh of the Jewish people is Hashem. And in front of their eyes, suddenly there is a Maayon, a spring of water. And Reb Tzvi and the Baal Shem Tov both went in the mikveh, and Reb Wolf is hiding behind a tree. The Baal Shem Tov comes out, and the Baal Shem Tov starts looking around in the brushes. In the brush, he's around the trees. He senses immediately that there is someone else over here. And busted! There he meets and he sees Reb Wolf. And he says, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. This is none of your business. And he sent him away. So no one knows the end of the story, what the Baal Shem Tov showed Reb Tzvi. But we know till this part of the story, they know, because Reb Wolf told them what he saw. Reb Wolf was so precious in the eyes of the Baal Shem Tov that he was the one that was appointed to be the Baltekea of the Baal Shem Tov. And here's one of the famous stories that people know of Reb Wolf. The Baal Shem Tov taught him the deep kavanas, spiritual, mystical meditations and thoughts that he's supposed to have during the tkiyas, each one according to Kabbalah and Mysticism. Each one means incredible, very high things. And the Baal Shem Tov sat and gave him a lesson. And Reb Wolf wanted to remember these teachings, chas v'sholem. He didn't want to lose even the tiniest detail. So he wrote them down on a paper. By the first tekiah, this is what you think. And by the shvarim, you're thinking about the connection of the chesed of Atik Yomin that's stimulating and flowing into this level and that level and this and that. And he's writing them. And the Baal Shem Tov was not so happy with him writing this stuff down on a paper. So when the Baal Shem Tov was not happy with something, so then the paper got lost. He put it into his kapata that he was going to wear, his bekeshe that he was going to wear for the blowing of the tkiyas. He had it all ready. And unbeknown to him, he stands there, he sets up the tkiyah shofar, he reaches to his pocket, and he tries to fumble for the paper. Is it this pocket? Is it this pocket? Meanwhile, the Baal Shem Tov is already saying the psukim that are happening right before. He doesn't find the paper, and he panics. The Baal Shem Tov himself sat, and he's relying on him. The Baal Shem Tov, he knows, is the leader of the Jewish people, the one that's directing the whole cosmic flow. And if he doesn't have those, what is he going to blow shofar with? And his mind is blank. He doesn't remember anything. And meanwhile, the Baal Shem Tov is already motions to him to say the brachas. With a broken heart, he says the brachas. And as he's about to put the shofar to his mouth, he can't bring himself to blow. He's in such pain, and he bursts out crying. And he cries and he cries, and he finally is able to put the shofar, and he blows a tekiah. And then he breaks down again by the shvarim, and he's weeping. And so it is all the shofar. He's crying and crying. And he manages hardly to get the tekiyas out. After the tekiah shofar, the Baal Shem Tov came to him, and the Baal Shem Tov said, oh wow, what a shofar today. Today your blowing was like on a whole different level. Today it was something else. And the Baal Shem Tov said to him, my dear Volf, he said, let me tell you. He says, in heaven there are many, many chambers. Many heichalos, many chambers. And in each chamber there is a door, and the door is locked. And to enter into each chamber, you need a special key. The mystical meditations, the shemos, the names of Hashem, these are the keys. And those people, tzadikim, who know them, can enter all these secret chambers. And when they need to draw down and affect whatever they need to affect. But every lock has its own key. But then there is something that opens up all doors. And that is the axe. If you come with an axe, then you can break down every wall. And the axe, that's a broken heart. And today, you blew shofar with a broken heart. And the broken heart can take you to places where all the mystical meditations and all the shemus and all the kavanas can never take you. And obviously that's one of the main deep teachings of the Holy Baal Shem Tov. Oy Shema.
Ta-da-da-hum. Repeat after
Everybody.
me. Ta-da-da-hum.
Ta-da-da.
Ta-da-da-hum.
Ta-da-da.
Milfanecha.
Milfanecha. Oy Malkeinu.
We gotta do better. Let's do it, mamish.
Come on.
Milfanecha.
Oy Milfanecha. Oy Malkeinu. Rebbe da 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 da. Oyom lefanecha, Ma'aval Alkeinu, Oy Neveveiko, Veshiveno, Oy Kikevevel Shoymeya. What? Let's do it after.
Yeah.
So how did the Tzaddik Rabbi Wolf become a Chassid of the Baal Shem Tov? Rabbi Wolf was a great Talmud Chacham, a very great scholar, great man. He was a rabbi in the city in a small town called Tulchin, not far from Mezhebush. And he married, I don't know if it was his first wife. He lived very long. According to some opinions, he passed away when he was 110 years old. He was 20 years older than the Baal Shem Tov. He moved to Mezhebush, according to what I saw in one source today, because he married the daughter, again, I'm not sure this was his only, could have been a second marriage or whatever. He married the daughter of Reb Naftali, who was the Rav in Mezhebush. When the Baal Shem Tov was there was a Reb Naftali who was the rabbi there. And he had a good friend named Reb David Forkes. Reb David Forkes and Reb Wolf Kitzes were two very, very close friends. Both of them were very great scholars and very great tzadikim on their own right. And they very much disliked the Baal Shem Tov. They felt that the Baal Shem Tov called himself Baal Shem Tov. And they thought that that was arrogant of him, that he gave himself name, Baal Shem Tov, a person with a good name. They didn't like that. So they, whatever. They were fine Jews. They didn't bother him. They let him do his thing and they did their thing, but that was it. And there's different stories of what caused the change, but here's one story that is said. They had a student, the two of them, they taught Torah, and they had a student, a brilliant student, big Talmud Chacham, who became very ill. And he got ill, and looked like it was nearing the end of his life. This young man was very sad. And this young man turned to his teachers and he said, please, please call the Baal Shem Tov to me. The Baal Shem Tov used to heal the sick. That was in the early. That was his. He was like he would give people like kameas and things. So he asked. They weren't fond of the Baal Shem Tov, but it was their students' wish, and he's on his deathbed, so they couldn't say no. So they told him on the condition that you're going to have to tell us what you spoke to him about. So he said, okay. The Baal Shem Tov came. When the Baal Shem Tov came, he said, everybody out of the room. He sent everybody out. And there was besides there was one kid who hid. According to one version of the story. I read two versions of this very story. The kid who hid. And the Baal Shem Tov told this individual, you should know at the time that it was decided that your soul has to be on earth has come to an end. You have to pass away. It's your destiny. This is what needs to happen. Because you fixed already everything you needed to fix in your life. You're okay, you're doing well. Besides one thing, the Baal Shem Tov said. There's one thing that you didn't take care of. And he says, I know, and I wish I could do something about it. And therefore he's worried because he's passing on and he didn't fix that one thing. The Baal Shem Tov said, don't worry, I'll help you out. The Baal Shem Tov says, I'll help you out, I'll send you out there, I'll get you into Gan Eden. That's what the Baal Shem Tov says. I'll get you into Gan Eden. The Baal Shem Tov says to him, but condition. You can't tell anybody what we're talking about. And then the Baal Shem Tov left. Reb David Forkis, the teachers, and Reb Wolf Kitzes came back in later, and they said to him, no. He wasn't going to say anything. The Baal Shem Tov said he can't say. This young kid came out, and he said, I heard. And he related what happened. And he affirmed it. In other words, then they said, is this true? This is what you discussed with the Baal Shem Tov. And he said he's going to get you into Gan Eden and that you took care of all your whatever you needed to do and so on and so forth. He said, yeah, that's what happened. So they were taken back a little bit because this Baal Shem Tov, like weird, strange fellow who's doing strange things that no one knows. This again in the early days, like before the Baal Shem Tov's name went out more, he's doing strange things. And here he's telling people that he's getting them into Gan Eden. That means he has a say up there and he can be down here, but he can also be in Gan Eden by the door, letting people in, and so on and so forth. So they realized that, who knows? But they want to make sure that he's not just selling him up the creek, if he's right. So they told him that when you're going to pass away, they made him make a handshake, that they're going to come back, and they're going to tell them what happened. Because they wanted to verify about the Baal Shem Tov. So he gave them his promise, that he was going to come and tell them. So it was, this young man passed away. And a while later, he came back to both of his teachers in a dream. And he told them what happened. He says, I came on the other world. I was led into Gan Eden, the city says. I don't know how, but I was led into Gan Eden. But wherever I tried to take a seat, they came and they chased me away. Someone said, it's my seat. No matter where I went, they pushed me away. And I wasn't having any rest. And then I saw the Baal Shem Tov. So I went over to him. And I said, didn't you, we spoke. You said you'll get me in, you'll take care of it. Now they're chasing me around and I'm having a hard time. The Baal Shem Tov says, you didn't keep your word. You promised your teachers you would go back and tell them what's going on. You haven't kept your word. The other version I read was because you said you weren't supposed to say anything either. Anyways, he did come back, and he said, and I'll tell you something. I heard the Baal Shem Tov saying Torah in Gan Eden. Again, the Baal Shem Tov is alive here in this world. He said that I heard the Baal Shem Tov saying Torah to the neshamas in Gan Eden, and he asked this and this question. He presented the question that the Baal Shem Tov asked, and he gave the answer that the Baal Shem Tov answered to these two individuals. They heard this, that Shabbos, Shalosh Shudas, they went to the Baal Shem Tov shul to Shalosh Shudas. As they walked in, the Baal Shem Tov started saying this very Torah, asking the very question that he asked. He asks the question, and they knew the answer. So they answered. So the Baal Shem Tov says, yeah, I know where you know that from. Your student who passed away told you the answer. And when they heard that the Baal Shem Tov is telling them what the student who is in Gan Eden is telling them, that he told them the answer, they realized that they're dealing with someone who's in a complete different plane. And he's there and here, and this was what opened up. Now, Rabbi Wolf actually saved the Baal Shem Tov 3 times. He was responsible 3 times for saving the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov saw Beruach HaKodesh with his holy eyes that the Yidden in Brody were deciding, the great scholars there, that they want to put the Baal Shem Tov and his students into cherem. Because, he's changing up certain things, making new minhagim, thing and that. And there were all kinds of rumors, and people say all kinds of stuff, and things were coming around as if the Baal Shem Tov is not really observant in all aspects of Yiddishkeit. And he was a kind of a danger. So they wanted to put the Baal Shem Tov in cherem. And the Baal Shem Tov very much didn't want that to happen. He called Rabbi Wolf and he sent him. He sent him to Brod, but he didn't tell him what for. Just told him to go. On the way, what happened was, this is what was going on in Brod. The people in Brod wanted to put the Baal Shem Tov in cherem, excommunicate him. But being that it's a big move, they felt that they want to have the consent and the agreement of the grand rabbi who was in charge over Brod. He wasn't living there, Reb Chaim Rappaport. Reb Chaim Rappaport was the great rabbi, and his authority was over Brod. So they felt if they're doing something like this, they want to have Reb Chaim Rappaport give their haskama. So they sent him a letter asking him that he should come to Brod for a very important meeting. They didn't tell him in the letter for what, but they asked Reb Chaim Rappaport. Reb Chaim Rappaport knew these are great scholars and they're not messing around, and they asked him to come. He agreed. So he left wherever he was and he traveled to Brody. On the way going, he stopped in an inn. That very same inn, Reb Wolf was coming also to that inn. But Reb Wolf was a quiet Jew. No one really knew who he was. And Chaim Rappaport got himself a nice suite. They took care of him. Reb Wolf slept, next to the fireplace. So Reb Chaim Rappaport finishes all his learning. He had a lot of shiurim that he learned. He's ready to go to sleep. It's about 12 midnight. He's ready to go to sleep. Meanwhile, Reb Wolf is laying there. And as he's ready to go to sleep, Reb Wolf wakes up for Tikkun Chatzos. No, he starts saying Tikkun Chatzos, and he's a little loud in his Tikkun Chatzos. He's crying, he's singing. And the rabbi, Reb Chaim Rappaport, can't sleep. After a while, he's tossing, he hears him, he has to check this guy out. So he comes out and he looks at him, and he looks like a sincere Jew. You can tell in him that he's not monkey business. This is the real deal. So after he was finished, he engaged him in conversation, and he realized not only is he a tzaddik, but he's a huge Talmud Chacham. And they sat talking to each other for hours and learning. And he was just baffled by this looked like a simple Yid who is such a genius and such a scholar. Fine. The next morning, he says to him, "No, so where are you going?" He says, I'm on my way to Brody. He says, I'm also on my way to Brody. He says, let's go together. So they go together. When they get there, they come to shul. And Reb Chaim Rappaport, they're waiting for him. So they all make him a big kabbalas panim, and they take him. And meanwhile, Volf goes off to the side, doing his thing. Sitting in, he doesn't know even why the Baal Shem Tov sent him here. He's sitting in the back, saying his tefillin, doing his thing. Meanwhile, they prepare a nice breakfast and a meeting. And then they sit down and they tell him the reason why they're here. They hand him a paper and they start giving all the accusations against the Baal Shem Tov and why the Chachmei and of Brody have decided to put the Baal Shem Tov in cherem. So Reb Chaim is listening, and he says, he says, I hear you. But he says, putting someone in cherem is a very big deal, especially since I hear great things about him. You can't just do this. He says, I feel that I can't do this just myself and with you. I need some other agreement. He says, we have to find some other great people to agree to this thing. And he says, you know what? He says, I know who I have. I met this person last night. I mean, he looks like a simple Jew. I don't know if he doesn't have these great credentials, but in my course of talking with him, this Yid is an amazing Jew. I saw his davening, and I heard his Torah. He's like a genius, a Talmud Chacham. He would be, and he's in town. I walked with him. I came here today. Let's go find him. So they go searching, and he tells them what he looks like, and they found him a shul there in the corner. And they bring him into the meeting. And they sit him down, and they start, and he didn't know anything. And they tell him they're here because they're here to put the Baal Shem Tov in cherem. So he jumps up, and he's screaming, "Oh, you guys crazy? You want to to put my teacher, my rebbe? He said, you know who the Baal Shem Tov is? And they start yelling at him. You're also there. Anyways, he starts refuting the arguments, and then he says certain things are not true. This and certain things you don't understand, and back and forth and back and forth and about. And then Reb Chaim said, if this is a student of the Holy Baal Shem Tov, if this is one of his students, then you guys got it all wrong. Anyways, the whole thing was dispersed, and Reb Chaim and Reb Zev Wolf came back to the Baal Shem Tov, and in that he saved the Baal Shem Tov from being put in the cherem. I'll tell you another story, since we're telling stories about him saving the Baal Shem Tov. It was once on Yom Kippur. The Baal Shem Tov was davening. And after Shachris, the Baal Shem Tov turned around and walked over to Rabbi Wolf and whispered something in his ear. Davening continued. When it came to Ne'ilah, the last closing davening of Yom Kippur, it suddenly became very, very overcast. Just by Ne'ilah, it became very cloudy, very dark. And it was a pretty nice day till then. Then it got very dark. And when it came Matzah Yom Kippur, Adav and Maayon, they want to do Kiddush Levana. And they can't do Kiddush Levana because there's no moon. It's blocked. The moon is blocked. After Yom Kippur, you do Kiddush Levana. You can't do it. So the Baal Shem Tov makes Havdalah. And of course, the mood is a little down because they can't do Kiddush Levana. They used to always be so festive in Kiddush Levana. But despite all of that, they start dancing. Because the students used to dance Matzah Yom Kippur. The Baal Shem Tov and the students, they're dancing. When suddenly, in the middle of the dancing, one student realized that Rabbi Wolf is not there. And he was always like in the chevra, he was always part of it. And where is he? So he started like, well, where's Wolf? Like it. And the Baal Shem Tov saw that he's beginning to ask around. The Baal Shem Tov said, motions to him, quiet, stop inquiring. Okay. And they hung around a little longer. They sat. It got late. Some of the students went home. The Baal Shem Tov was still sitting around with some of the Talmidim. When like 2 hours later, there's a knock on the door, and Rabbi Wolf is here. And Rabbi Wolf comes in, he says, Rebbe, there's a moon. It's cleared up. We can go outside. So they go outside, the students that are there. Oh, do I remember when we wrote the letters in Mezhebush. The Baal Shem Tov Sefer Torah was Matzah Shabbos. We were in the shul of the Baal Shem Tov. At 12 o'clock midnight, it was a Malka like this. Wow, we were singing, and then it's like, whoa. And they redid the shul exactly like it was. Like, I have pictures of it. It feels like it. So we're sitting and we're singing, and then we went outside to do Kiddush Levana, and it was cloudy, and then in the middle of the clouds, there was something so surreal and you thought about that. That's the place where these stories took place, when there's no moon, and the Baal Shem Tov walked out there in the courtyard. And in any case, they made Kiddush Levana, and it was very, very happy. And then the Baal Shem Tov and the students said, like, what? This was an interesting day. They wanted to know what was going on. And the Baal Shem Tov related to them that he was notified in heaven this Yom Kippur that there's a very big kitruk, there's a very great accusation against him, and that he's going to have to pass away. The time has come that the Baal Shem Tov is going to leave the world. And the proof to it that he should know that this is serious is when it's going to come Ne'ilah, it's going to get very cloudy, and they won't be able to make Kiddush Levana. That's what he said. That's what they told him in heaven. And when the Baal Shem Tov walked over to Rabbi Wolf, as he whispered to him after Shachris, and he told him about this. So Rabbi Wolf was davening with all his being, and that's why at night, when it was overcast and there was no Kiddush Levana, he was nowhere to be found, because he was weeping and crying his soul out and begging Hashem for the life of his master, to save the Baal Shem Tov's life. And his tefillahs were accepted. And we came back to tell the Baal Shem Tov that the clouds have dispersed and that they can make Kiddush Levana. So he's talking about the caliber of Rabbi Wolf. Big tzaddik. Big tzaddik. I'm going to share with you something that got me so excited, and afterwards we'll sing a Geshmak and Niggin. They got me so excited. This is what almost no one knows. No one knows. When I saw this, in the Memorim of the Alter Rebbe, there is from Shneur Zalman of Liadi, there's discourses. There is a volume called Mamorim HaKtsarim, short discourses. He has a mimer starting Lahavin Inyan Tzadikim Revolve Kitzes. To understand the idea of tzadikim and the relationship of Revolved Kitzes with the Baal Shem Tov. This is the mimer. It's a mimer of the Alter Rebbe. And there he relates a very powerful question. Rabbi Wolf was a very big Yerushalayim. He was very, very, very careful with mitzvahs. Very careful mitzvahs. The son of Rabbi Michal of Zlotchev, I forgot his name, writes about Rabbi Wolf Kitzes that he was so meticulous in mitzvahs that even a needle, a sewing needle, he would take to the mikveh. He would dip it. He was very, very cautious and very extra. He didn't eat from anything that was not shechted in front of his eyes. If a chicken was not shechted, he did not oversee it. He never ate from it. Even if the Baal Shem Tov was there overseeing it, and he didn't. And then, one time, or maybe more than once, he didn't approve of the salting of the chicken that the Baal Shem Tov, that they did in the house of the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov was eating and he wasn't eating. So the Alter Rebbe asks the question, how can he be more frum than his rabbi? You're now allowed to question after your teacher. And how could Rabbi Wolf not eat from the hechsher of his own Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov? So the Alter Rebbe says you're never supposed to copy tzadikim when it comes to certain leniencies that they do. And he says, and I'll explain you why. He says, because there are certain tzadikim whose neshamis are from Atzilus. Like the Baal Shem Tov, Atzilus is the highest world. Those tzadikim could be much more lenient in observance. He says, because in all four worlds, there's different rules and regulations when it comes to the birurim, the rectifications, the purifications that need to be made. In every world, it's different. He says the Tanoim and the Amoraim, their neshamas were from the world of Bria. That's why they authored the Mishnah. The Mishnah, it says in Kabbalah, is from Olam HaYetzira, from the world of Yetzira. Since they are from the world of Bria, and Bria is higher than Yetzira, so therefore they authored the Mishnah, because they're above, but they're from Bria. Besides a few of the Tanoim who are from Atzilus, neshamas of Atzilus. Who are they? Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Reb Meir, and others. He says, and it's interesting, he says, that those tzadikim whose neshamas are from Atzilus, because they're so high, and in the higher worlds you don't have to be afraid of the chitzonim, you don't have to be scared because they don't have any connection to you, because you're so high, you're fireproof anyways, so you can be far more lenient because you don't have to be afraid that they'll hack you. You're okay. So therefore he says, it's interesting that these very high neshamas, most of the time the halacha is not like them. Because observance is for most Jews, and most Jews are in a lower world. So he says for the Baal Shem Tov, there wasn't a problem to eat from the chicken that was salted as zikach. But for him it was. And the lesson that he says over there is not to copy the tzadikim when it comes to leniencies, because they're working in a different frequency. That's the story. Chaim. I died, I died, I died, I died, Let's give a big thank you to Maayon for picking up and bringing us the pizza. Yasher Koyach. Three times. The son of Reb David of Lelev, the son of the great tzaddik Reb David of Lelev, related as follows. When the holy Baal Shem Tov passed away, Rabbi Wolf, being one of the senior students, was by the funeral, was like right up front, accompanying his master. And suddenly he did a very strange thing. The Baal Shem Tov was covered with a talis. He came and he uncovered the Baal Shem Tov's face. And then he covered him back up. Then he uncovered it again and he covered a few times. Strange. And at a certain point, someone said to him, Volf, what are you doing? Like, why are you uncovering? We don't do this. Usually a mace is covered. Why are you uncovering? Tells you what kind of person Rabbi Wolf is taken. He says, I feel bad for the angels. He says, the Malachim always wanted to look at the Baal Shem Tov. They wanted to see who is this tzaddik who's getting the Eibishter so excited. Who is this tzaddik? And they always wanted to look at the Baal Shem Tov's face, but because they're not looking with fleshy eyes, they're looking with angel's eyes. The light radiating from the Baal Shem Tov's face is so bright that it would blind the angels. So they can never look at him. They couldn't look at the Baal Shem Tov. So during the lifetime of the Baal Shem Tov, the Malachim never got to see him. Now that he passed away, I saw by the funeral that a bunch of Malachim came to peek. So I feel bad for them, so I'm giving them a little peek. Now that he passed away, his light of his physical body is a little dimmer, that the angels are able to look at the holy Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov took one of his great students, Ramichal of Zlotchev, and the Baal Shem Tov brought Ramichal to become a rabbi. The Baal Shem Tov worked at Ramichal of Zlotchev, which hopefully we'll have a Malava Malka about in one of these months, to become a rabbi in a town or a city called Haradna, something like that. When he came there, so the Baal Shem Tov came for Shabbos together with the student Ramichal to oversee the appointment. Rabbi Wolf accompanied the Baal Shem Tov on this journey. When they were there for Shabbos, the custom was that the new rabbi, when he was appointed, would give a Torah, a pilpul, would give to show everybody that he's a great scholar, he's the rabbi. So all the great lamdanim in the town came to the speech, to the shir, and he gave Ramichal Zlotchev was a great Talmud Chacham, and he gave a good shir. But one of the guys over there, his name was also Michal, and he was a judge, he was a dayan, he was called Michal Dayan. And he was a Drey cup. You know, sometimes you meet a Drey cup, this was a Drey cup. And he kept on interrupting the shir. And everything, he kept on asking kashas back and forth. He was driving Ramichal a little meshuggah. And he couldn't get far into his speech. Every time he tried to say something, he was asking questions and back and forth. And Ramichal somehow made it through the whole shir, finished. And then this person was persistent. He said, "No, what's with the questions I asked you?" So he says, "You know what?" He says, "Come Shalashudis and I'll answer them." So Shalashudis, they prepared a big Shalashudis in one of the houses of the rich people, of the rich person in the town, the Parnas, and they had, and the Baal Shem Tov was there as well. And Ramichal was sitting over there, and this Michal Dayan also sat up front because he was the big knacker over there with the questions and so forth, the big lamdan. And Rabbi Wolf was sitting at the end. The Baal Shem Tov suddenly calls Rabbi Wolf and he says, "You sit next to me." And Rabbi Wolf the Baal Shem Tov said, "There's nothing that I dislike more than a humble one." In other words, don't give me no humility right now. You sit right over here. So Rabbi Wolf sat next to him, next to the Baal Shem Tov. And Ramichal of Zlotchev, the rabbi, started repeating again, and this time, and this Ramichal, the other Michal, started interrupting again. So Reb Zev couldn't handle it anymore. And Reb Zev started debating with this other Michal. And back and forth, and finally this Reb Wolf, Kitzes, he showed him that he's wrong, that his whole complaint on the thing is off. And he was having a hard time to agreeing that he's wrong, but it was quite obvious, so finally he kind of silenced and was done. Fine. The next day, the Baal Shem Tov was leaving on Sunday, and he was going to go to a bris in a little village not far. And he took Reb Wolf with him. And this Reb Michal decided that he wants to come along. This, not Reb Michal of Zlotchev, this other Michal, the Dayan, the Drey cup. So he joined in the wagon. As they're riding, no, wait a second. What happened was that after the Reb Wolf had proven him wrong, he didn't want to accept it, and he was continuing to try the Drey, and the Baal Shem Tov suddenly said, "Stop it! Stop ruining the Shalashudis." That's what he said. He just be quiet already. The next day, he joined in this wagon, and he decided he wanted to show that he's a big scholar. So he wanted to show that he's very knowledgeable. So he started talking. This time, not in learning, but he started talking on worldly things. And he started talking about, his knowledge in science. And suddenly Reb Wolf takes him on this. And then back and forth is debating with him. And he was very surprised. How is the Chassid, this pious Jew, what does he know in Chachmas Chitzenis? What does he know in sciences and so on? They went to the bris, and the Baal Shem Tov was sent this Reb Michal back home, of course, and he was leaving. And the Baal Shem Tov realized that this fellow is going to give his student Reb Michal that he appointed a very hard time for the rest of the time that he's there. You know what I mean? Okay, until now Shabbos, the Baal Shem Tov is there, kind of to protect Reb Michal of Slabodkea. But this guy is gonna make his life miserable. So the Baal Shem Tov did whatever he needed to do to cause this Michal Dayan to forget his entire learning. Basically, he wiped his hard drive clean. Everything. He knocked him out, everything. He didn't know of anything. And at night, he sat down to study. He was a scholar, and he opens up his Gemara. And he starts reading. And he can't make heads and tails in the Gemara and what he was trying to learn. Versteht gar nicht. Literally knows nothing. And he was getting very annoyed. Then he thought to himself, probably he's tired. He said, maybe I'm just tired. I traveled this and that. I was on travel. Let me go back to sleep. So he went to sleep. He woke up in the morning and he gonna have a Seder again, starts learning. And literally. So he realized that someone has been messing with his brain. So he came to the Baal Shem Tov. He realized what was going on. He came to the Baal Shem Tov. And he asked, what's going on? What do you do? Why did you rob me from my learning? Baal Shem Tov said to him, this is why you learn, to show off and to show that you're smarter and that you're, So he said, Rebbe, you're right. You're right. That's been my motivation. Right then and there, he accepted upon himself not to do that again. The Baal Shem Tov gave him back his Torah, and he became a real Chassidish Yid, this fellow. But this was the story of Michal Dayan. The Baal Shem Tov took away his learning, and Rabbi Wolf. Here's another great story. The Baal Shem Tov once told his students that a tzadik yisoid olam, an unbelievable great tzadik is coming to town. It's going to be a Mezhebush. A tzadik yisoid olam. You know what it means, a tzadik yisoid olam? A tzadik is the foundation of the world. There is tzadikim, and then there is a super tzadik. This is a super tzadik. The Baal Shem Tov said, anybody of you, he tells the students, who is going to do this person a favor, is going to merit the world to come. So Rabbi Wolf decided, I'm going to go find this fellow. So he's scouring the town back and forth. Every day, he's looking all over, and he's checking the guest house. He's looking around where all the schleppers are, this, that, looking, trying to find him, and then nothing seemed to match that this was it. Finally, on Friday, he's in the mikveh. He goes to the bathhouse, the mikveh, and he prepared for himself, Rabbi Wolf, a nice hot, you had to go warm, get a big pail of hot water, and he was gonna relax a little and take some time in the mikveh, bathing, and he had his, they used to have this branch, a bucket of leaves in which they use as scrubbing and soap and that. He had lipstick thing, and he's all ready for his shower and for his preparation for the mikveh. When he sees suddenly a very poor man, tattered, and looks like really a chalashes mamish, that looks really scary, comes in, and he stands next to the stones. There was stones over there they used maybe for heating. He's standing in there next to the stones, and suddenly his clothing is really terrible looking, and suddenly he gives a krechts, but this was like a bloody krechts. It wasn't just a regular, not a scream. No, it wasn't a scream. A krechts meaning a sigh, but such a sigh that it felt like it ripped through all of his bones. He real deep frustration, a deep painful. So he realized this is him. Something told him. He had a knack. He said, this is him. So he jumps out of his, little bath over there, grabs his towel, goes over to him, and he says, Rabbi Yid, he says, oh wait. And what happened was, there is the mikveh guy who was in charge of the place. sees the schlepper over there, standing over there and making noise and krechzing, and then he thinks, so he runs over and he says, get out of it, you pay, you didn't even pay, get out of here. And he wants to chase him out of the mikveh. So he says, stop it, leave him alone. So he goes over and he says, hey, go. He says, I prepared you a nice, good bath. And he hands him his ecliptic branch. He said, you'll use this. All right. The guy goes to comes out. Rabbi Wolf had brought his Shabbos clothing with him to the bathhouse to change from his weekday clothing to Shabbos clothing. So Rabbi Wolf puts on his Shabbos clothing and he tells you, so he says to him, you know what, here, take my pants, put this on. He gave him his weekday clothing. So the man said, no, I have my clothing. Oh no, he invited him to come. He said, and you're going to come to me for Shabbos. He accepted the invitation. So when he wanted to give him now the clothing, he said, no, I got my clothing. So he says, listen here, this is what Volf says. I'm a respectable person. You can't come into my house with clothing like that. He says, so I'll take my clothing. Okay, tells him, takes the clothing. He comes for Shabbos, and he's by him, and he's like looking after him the whole time to see if he can like crack his, where is his soft spot? Where can he actually see that this person is an exalted tzaddik? He doesn't see anything. Very regular guy, nothing there, just other than the fact that he's miserably poor and looks like, he's had better days. Other than that, he doesn't see anything in him. Okay. Comes Motzei Shabbos. This is a real story. Rabbi Pinchas Karitzer in a Sefer Imre Pinchas brings this story. Comes Motzei Shabbos. He sees that this person is taking off his clothing. So he says to him, what are you doing? He says, I'm leaving, so I'm returning you your clothing. He says, and you think I'm going to wear the clothing after you wore it? I'm a respectable person. So he wanted him to keep it. So like this will keep. So he said, okay, he kept it. So Rabbi Wolf decided, again, the Baal Shem Tov said anybody that's going to give him, help him out. So he decides that he's going to go out and he'll collect some money for him. So he runs around town collecting some money. He comes back with like a couple of ruble that he collected for him. When he gets back to his house, the guy disappeared, not there. So he's not going to let go. So he starts searching. He runs out of the city looking for him. And he caught him outside of the city. And he says to him, hey, Rabbi, here's the money. He says, no, I'm not taking. He says, no, I give to every guest. Nobody, every guest that comes to me doesn't leave without some money. So take it. The guy took the money and left. The Baal Shem Tov met Rabbi Wolf after it, and he said, Rabbi Wolf, Hechiyasani, you saved my life. Another time. He says, you should know that the world has two levels. There's the revealed world and the concealed world. Me and that person are buddies. He is the tzaddik in the hidden, and I'm the tzaddik in the revealed. But me and him go together. He says, you should know that he's on a whole different level. He says, but this person, life was getting very hard for him. He was very poor and having suffered. And with the big tzaddik that he was able to he negotiated that he should end his life already because he was just too horrible for him. And he was willing to leave. And the Baal Shem Tov said, if he goes, I have to go too, because we a match. He's in the hidden and I'm on the outside. So by the fact that you saved him, he was already suicidal, this fellow. And he was ready to end it. In a way a tzaddik can end it. He was ready to go, but when you helped him out of the mikveh then, and you gave him your clothing and gave him some money, you kind of, chilled him out a little bit. He's willing to hang around a little longer. And the Baal Shem Tov, now why didn't the Baal Shem Tov do it himself? That was he decreed upon in heaven that he couldn't do it, and he couldn't even tell anybody openly. He had to do it beremez. Yeah. What? So you never know. That's what he says. You never know. That's what Shlomo Carlebach always said. You never know who's will.
You never know. 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 You never know.
So the Rabbi Wolf is the person who says about his master. This is amazing. Rabbi Wolf once told, who he told, it's recorded. He says this, that it is written about the holy Arizal, that he knew the language of the birds, he knew the language of the trees, of the grass, of the malachim, sichos malachim, and that he would converse with spirits, and he would converse, and he knew the shoresh and the story of every neshama, where he says all of that and even more I saw by my rebbe, the holy Baal Shem Tov. He says, and even much greater, and this was all considered small little things by him, because of his unbelievable fear and love of Hashem that he had, he reached incredible levels that are beyond. That's an interesting thing that he said. He compared the Baal Shem Tov to the Arizal, and he said that the Baal Shem Tov was on levels incredible. And he said, now the Baal Shem Tov said to Rabbi Wolf once, you and I, we're almost the same. We're almost the same, you and I. You're almost on my level, the Baal Shem Tov said to him. The difference between me and you is only one hair. One hair. The width of one hair. He says, but that width of one hair, you'll never be able to cross. You'll never catch up to me. That one hair, that's the whole difference between me and you. But that's the difference between the divine and the whole. It's the crossing over of the realm of the unbelievable. But one hair. Rabbi Wolf. Here's a story. You know the famous story of the Kozhnitz and Magids, when the Kozhnitz, everybody knows the story when the Baal Shem Tov laughed. It was Friday night, and the Baal Shem Tov laughed 3 times during the meal. And then later, he related that why he laughed, and he took his students to go meet Reb Shapsi, the bookbinder. And there's the parents of the Kozhnitz and Magid. I'm not going to tell the story tonight because it's a story to tell when we're going to have a Malava Malka on the holy Kozhnitz and Magid. But in that story, it says that the person who came to ask the Baal Shem Tov, why did you laugh 3 times? That was Reb Wolf. Because Reb Wolf was always the one who would approach the Baal Shem Tov with questions. He had access. He actually lived in the Baal Shem Tov's house. Talking about closeness. He was the right-hand man. One time, according to one story, he became Niskarev to the Baal Shem Tov. He didn't again, I remember I told you earlier that he didn't like them, but they called himself Baal Shem Tov. One of the things he was really much disapproved of, the Baal Shem Tov used to daven Mincha, Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, for the Amid. The last prayer in the weekday, which is Mincha, Erev Shabbos, the Baal Shem Tov would daven himself for the Amid, meaning, and he would, with a talis. And the Baal Shem Tov would daven that tefillah for hours. Literally hours. He would daven Shemana. He would start very early, and it would be hours and hours until he would be finished Mincha. And we know that the Baal Shem Tov basically in those last minutes of the week was fixing everything in the world that needed still repair for the week. The whole finishing. So he was doing Masak Neshamis, Masak and everything. So he would stand in a trance for hours. He felt, this Volf, Reb Wolf, that a person cannot concentrate so many hours. It's impossible. And therefore, he felt that the Baal Shem Tov is a fraud. Because it's impossible for a person to concentrate in Shemona Esrei for this duration of time. So one time, he came to the minyan, and as the Baal Shem Tov was davening with his talus over his head, he came up to the Baal Shem Tov and picked up the Baal Shem Tov's talus, and he looked at the Baal Shem Tov's face, and he fainted. He dropped down immediately. Not the Baal Shem Tov. He fell on the floor and he fainted. And then later they revived him. He was ill for 3 months. He was sick, and he related what shook him like that. He said, I looked at him, and I saw that his face was ablaze, literally like a fire, but his eyes were bulging out of his sockets. Literally, the eyes were bulging, and they didn't move. And he looked literally like a person. His eyes looked like he wasn't alive. So, in other words, it was outward, and it was like the scare. And he realized that he's not in this world. He's literally not here. Shabbos and Mincha, Shabbos, Erev Shabbos by Mincha. And that was the thing that he saw on the Baal Shem Tov. Let me relate to. So the Kaj is a beautiful story. So the Kajnitz Magid related this story about Rabbi Wolf Kitzes. The Kajnitz Magid related this awesome story. The Baal Shem Tov once saw that there is a Jew, saw with his holy eyes, that there was a Jew who was a very big machnes orech. He used to always have guests, lots of guests. And he would literally, he did whatever he can for his guests to make them comfortable and everything. He had a beautiful home. He would mamish take care of his guests, everything. He did mitzvah sachnosas orchim in a very special way. But the Baal Shem Tov saw that this person was very proud of the mitzvah that he's doing. And the achnosas orchim was making him arrogant, that he felt so special that he's doing such a great mitzvah. So much so that every guest that would come to him and he would treat him nicely, he wouldn't control himself, and he would say to this guest, right, I'm an unbelievable machnas orech, right? He would say that, right, I do achnosas orchim really well. He would always seek the approval of all his guests of what kind of achnosas orchim. And the Baal Shem Tov was seeing that he's doing such a great mitzvah, but the pride that he's getting out of it and the arrogance is stealing all that mitzvah and flushing it down into the other side. And the Baal Shem Tov really felt bad that this guy is trying so hard, but he's messing things up with that arrogance. So the Baal Shem Tov wanted to help him out, so he sent Rabbi Wolf to go to his house. So Rabbi Wolf came, and he welcomed him in, and he was taking care of him really well, and he had a lot of other guests, and he was taking him. And then he turns to Rabbi Wolf, and he says, "No, so what do you think about my achnosas orchim? Eh? Pretty cool, no?" And Rabbi Wolf said, "We'll see. Ordinary, we'll still see." He didn't like it, but okay. A little while later, he comes to him again. He says, "So, what do you think about it?" He says, "We'll see." Came in the night, and everybody went to sleep. This guy was so concerned about his guests, he always wanted to take care of them, that he would sleep not in his own bedroom, he would sleep with his guests outside. Not outside, in the bed. So this fellow fell asleep together. So Reb Wolf creeps up to him after he's sleeping and takes a hold of his pinky. That's what he holds on to his finger. As he holds on to his finger, this fellow starts dreaming. And in his dream, he sees that he has a royal visitor. The king came to visit him in his house. And he offers the king a tea. He brings him a tea. And the king drinks the tea, and halfway down the cup, drinking the tea, the king starts coughing, and he falls dead. He killed the king. Oh my. And right away, the guards, people, this guy, he poisoned the king. No doubt about it. He drank his tea. So they take this fellow, and they threw him into prison. He's in jail there. He's dreaming. And a miracle happens, that there's a fire that breaks out in the prison, and he manages to escape. Runs away, and he's running. He comes to a town that he doesn't know. He needs to make a living. So he became a water carrier. And he's schlepping water from place to place, but water, people don't pay too much for water. So it was hard to etch out a living He was a wealthy man. Now, and now he's getting water. He doesn't feel like he's getting anywhere with this water carrying, and he wants to improve. So he's thinking, where can he go to a place where people will pay for water? So he hears that there's a place that you charge, the water carriers charge a lot of money in that place. So therefore he says, you know what, he'll go do his work at this other place. He's doing the same work. So he goes to that other town where the water is expensive. And he's delivering water. But there was one condition over there. That if you delivered water to someone's house and a tiny little bit of that water spilled, you didn't bring the entire bucket full to the top, then the person would get the water and they wouldn't pay a penny for it. That was the rule, the regulation. But like this, they pay top dollar for the water. So he's delivering, and because he's so careful and trying not to drop any water and all of this, he trips and he falls and he breaks his leg. And he's limping. Now he can't deliver water. And in his misery, he's thinking about, look what happened to me. I was a wealthy man. I was so this, and now I'm schlepping water over here. Now I can't even deliver the water, and I have a broken leg. And he's like, nah. And suddenly, Reb Wolf lets go of his pinky. As he lets go of his pinky, he wakes up, and he sees he's in his bed next to all the other guys sleeping, and he feels so good. Oh, Baruch Hashem, this is not real. It was only a dream, and I'm here. And so Reb Wolf says to him, you should know, he says, that if you're not, I think I remember the end, he said to him that if you're not, this happened to you because of your arrogance. That's what he said to him. Because of your arrogance, you're doing a great thing, he says, but because of you're so important because of what you're doing. So what's the interpretation of the dream? Why did he show him this dream? Because if you take a look and you analyze the story, you see that this guy kept on getting hurt by the good things that he was doing. He wasn't doing anything bad. He offers the king a drink. And then the king dies from it. Because we know Rav Wolf was really giving him the dream, which was maybe coming from the Baal Shem Tov, which is really that there's the action that you're doing, and then there's the consequences that come from the action. What are the ramifications that come from the action? Sometimes a Jew can be doing a good act, but the energy of that act could be delivered to the forces of darkness. Klippas can be deriving energy, and that's in this case. He had this. He's feeding the king, and that itself, the good deed that he did, landed him in jail. Then he's bringing water to everybody, and he's not managing to get the water to its proper destination. And he's causing himself, the very act of delivering water, which is a good thing, and he breaks his leg. In other words, things are breaking, and it's not reaching its goal and its target. And that was the lesson that the Baal Shem Tov was teaching him, that the motivation in a mitzvah has to be pure, has to be holy, has to be correct. L'chaim. Shir chadash yashuv v'nana leveshana shir chadash ol v'nana yibane amin Yibane amin Etzion Temala Veshana Shir Chadash Venana Veshana Shir Chadash Venana Hey Yibane amin Etzion Temala Yibane amin Etzion Temala Veshana Shir Chadash Venana Veshana Shir Chadash Venana Hey Yibane Ay Veshana Shir Chadash Ay
Recording this, by the way? Where?
On my YouTube.
Where are you recording it?
It's automatically through here. It's going.
Oh, yeah? Hey, are you going to do it more often?
I do them once a month.
Oh, wow.
Bring people.
I didn't know that.
The best. Yeah. We do it in the winter, in the summer. Maybe if we build a crowd, we'll do it in the summer too.
Who is the Baal Shem Tov?
Shem Tov is the founder of Chassidus.
He's Chabad Chassidic?
Oh, he's the father of all Chassidim. For the Baal Shem Tov.
But for everybody else?
Sure it is. Last bit of the week.
Thank you so much. Maybe this week? Okay, let's be in touch.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Rabbi.
Wednesday, then.
We didn't have room in the bed in the Baal Shem Tov place. What are you talking about? It's smaller than this place.
Yes.
Beautiful.
His bedroom must
I'll
be
tell you one last story.
Oh,
Thank you. One last story, and we're done. Oh yeah, Chavre, please don't forget to bench. Yeah, we'll make a. I didn't wash, but we should make bench with 10 people. But here's the last story that I want to relate today. Last story that I wanted to tell. Okay. There's a little apikoros in every, there's a little apikoros, that means a little non-believer in each and every one of us, called the Yetzer Hara, who sometimes thinks he's so smart. So I had tonight a little apikoros wake up inside of me. I read a story. I was doing some research on stories. I'm looking around here and there trying to find about Rabbi Wolf here, there. So tonight, there was one last story that I wanted to see, and I found it online. And I'm reading the story, and I read it. And it says a nice source, a Chassidic source, Shmuel's V'Sipurim. It's a story, it's a Chabad Sefer. But when I read the story, I said, this is not a true story. Can't be, Ishkan Emes Amaisa. And I dismissed it. And I'll tell you why I dismissed it soon. And after that, and I knew right away that that's the little apikoros of me that thinks it's a whole researcher and he's so smart and he can slug up the story. I did a little more research and I'll prove to you that the story, very, 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 very likely that it did happen. So here's the story. It was amazing what happened. Story. This takes us to the Inquisition. Someone was a minister from, when the story was written, it was written that he was a minister, one of the ministers in the Spanish government in Spain. They caught him as a secret, whatever, they had suspicious on him that he has secret Jewish practices. Anyways, they sentenced him to death, and they were going to have the auto da fe, and they were going to burn him on the stake. And as they were bringing him out, and they had him tied already, I think. Now the king didn't want it to happen because the king liked him, but the church had power overriding the king. And as they were ready to light the fire, there was a big earthquake. And this fellow, because of the whole mayhem and the craziness and so on and so forth, and the guards of the king were there, and they were able to whisk this guy away and escape. They took him across the border and he was freed. That's the story. He was just baffled by the fact that he was saved by such a crazy thing, that there was an earthquake, and that's kind of got him out of this. He was so, and he's thinking about it a lot. He couldn't stop thinking about it. He's just thinking, is this just an accident? Or this is the Eibishter saving his life? He couldn't make up his mind. And he thought to himself as follows: if this was just a stroke of good luck, then he can continue being quietly in his heart a Jew, but outside he can continue being, But if God did an open miracle for him, if this is the hand of Hashem clearly, then that would require that he embrace Judaism out in the open, not something in secret. Again, he wasn't anymore in a dangerous place. He had left Spain or Portugal. He had left it. But now, so he decided to send this question to rabbis. And he did not tell them that it was asking about himself. He was asking on the story. Is something like this by divine providence? Or something like this is just... And he was getting answers, but he wasn't satisfied with the answers. He was looking. And right when I'll say the next words, you might have the little apikoros in you that will ask the same question like me. And here's the next words. He heard about the Baal Shem Tov. Okay? So you have the question, I know your question. So he left, so he managed to make his way to the Baal Shem Tov. When he came there, he met someone outside, it was Rabbi Wolf, and he asked him where, and when, and he sent him into the Baal Shem Tov. As soon as he walked through the door, the Baal Shem Tov says, "Hey minister, how are you?" And the Baal Shem Tov said, "I know your question. I know your question. But you don't have to speak to me. You can speak to the fellow I met outside and ask him your question." So he first of all, he gets stunned because he was hiding his identity. Here he goes and he calls a minister of whatever. He got really... So he goes outside and he meets Rabbi Wolf and he asks him the question. So Rabbi Wolf says to him like this: even if it's true, even if it was, that this earthquake was planned before creation, that God decided that at that moment and so on and so forth, and that place, there's going to be an earthquake, the very fact that they decided to execute you on that day that God had decided already way back then that's going to be your cure, that itself is divine providence, hashgacha pratis. This is what he told him. He was satisfied with the answer and he went on, and whatever happened to him, obviously he became a... That's the story. I'm reading it and the question is, the Baal Shem Tov's days, this is already way after the Ordo phase, the killings of the Inquisition. This stuff was happening in the 14, 15, 1600s. The Baal Shem Tov's already in the 1700s. This guy gets saved by an earthquake. It's the days of the Baal Shem Tov, and he's coming to the Baal Shem Tov. The whole story hat mich nicht geschmeckt. I didn't feel that there's any historical backup to back up a story like this. So I start putting in Ordo Fe, earthquake, this, that. When was the last Ordo Fe? I found out that in Mexico there was an Ordo Fe in 1850 still, the last one. In 1852, where they had a ceremony of burning Jews or whatever. And I'm doing a little more research. Turns out that in the city of Lisbon, in Portugal, in 1755, there was a massive earthquake that decimated, one of the worst earthquakes in terms of, they say it was close to a 0.9, that earthquake, 9.0. It was like a crazy strong earthquake. It was off in the Atlantic, but it hit Lisbon very strong, and it destroyed 2/3 of the city. Thousands of people died in that earthquake. Okay. Wait, story's not over. In 1755.
That's the year of the Baal Shem.
Wait. I'm looking. Wait. Don't get away. I'm looking into this a little more, and I'm looking in Wikipedia, and I'm seeing what did they do as a result of it. So one of the things that they did at Takana, they were trying to figure out what this is, how they're gonna. So the religious amongst them were saying this is divine retribution, and who's at fault? The Jews are at fault. So they decided to actually increase their Ordo phase after that. To have more of them. And then there's a footnote over there that says that actually, on the day of, and you know why? Because someone wrote a novel. A great author wrote, because there was a lot of, in the arts, this earthquake was made its way into the various different plays and things, because it was a massive story. It changed many things. So someone wrote in a novel a whole thing about an earthquake happening by Ordo Fe and a ganz Geschäft. This story. So in the bottom they write that actually the day of the earthquake there was a scheduled Ordo Fe which was supposed to take place. Then I'm looking at 1755, and comes out that which year is it? It's Taf Kuf Tes Vav, which is literally, the Baal Shem Tov passed away in Taf Kuf Chav. This is literally between Taf Kuf Yud and Taf Kuf Chav. And Rabbi Wolf Kitzes came to the Baal Shem Tov a couple of years before that. So this is mamish at that 10-year period. Like this is in that zone when this guy could have. It's very possible. The story. There was an earthquake during, and the guy ran away. I'm not. Again, I don't have evidence the story happened, but this that I was like refuting, saying it's impossible because this. It pretty much turned out that something like this happened at that time. That there was a. Yeah. So. That was how I said.
I heard this much.
You heard the Maisa, but again, I thought it was. Let's do the song now. Don't forget the bench. Baal Shem Tov passed in 1760. 5 years after. That story happened 5 years before.
But that's the same year that the guy escaped from the earthquake.
Probably. Yeah.
Is there a swarm of Baal Shem Tov in English?
Wow.
Like what?
Look up.
Does the mic work?
Yes.
Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, I'm here.
We have people watch. People watch.
Who watched? How many do we have that watch?
We gotta go, Rabbi.
Hello. Hello.
So we have Shia S. Amecha.
You ate one. You watched it.
I didn't watch. So we have.
It's okay.
Yeah, we have 7. Let's go. So that we can make it.
You have a handle. You can still bench.
Okay, so someone say.
You have Shulchan Aruch that if you eat and you think that you're not going to eat enough.
He's leaving.
You watched?
You gone?
You watched?
Thanks. Sorry. It's okay. Good to see you. Great to see you. I could whatever. Join you.
You're not going to lead it, you're saying.
Huh?
You're not going to lead it.
Oh no. You want to do it? Yeah, you can do this one. I want to do a song. Said we could do a song for you. It's
I want
deep.
to bench first. So we're gonna have a Mazuman. You take it away.
Hello.
What about you? Daniel, you want to do a voice session? Lead the benches.
No, I can't.
Go for it.
I can't lead it.
Okay, I'll see you in an hour. Go to the next one.
Here, give me a D minor, A minor, A minor, D minor.